Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, Tracy, Mo. Thank you guys for joining me for the conversation. It's a great week after the election, so we're going to tap into some of that stuff during the conversation as well. But you guys have got some vast experience. You haven't met before as well. I'm very excited to actually introduce you to because there's actually a lot that you guys do that could overlap. So no doubt there's going to be a follow-up conversation to be had. But to kick us off, Tracy, connect the dots for us first from where you started in your career to where you are today. How did you even get into your career? Where your passions lie? Over to
Oh
you.
goodness. Well, thanks for having me, Mo. It's nice to meet you officially. Um, yeah, I started like any great Florida girl from the U.S. Started out bartending and surfing um, when I was in college. Got my PhD as a bar manager, and then I realized very early on that there's a lot of aspects in healthcare. I'm in healthcare. There's a lot of aspects in healthcare that are really, really beautiful, and then there are a lot that are really, really broken in the U.S. And I really wanted to be based off of my how I was raised. I really wanted to be a vessel of change and a voice of change as much as I can be in healthcare. And so I went in, I was a clinician at first, and realized very quickly that some people are gifted with being able to um, really love people so much and want to take care of them as patients. And I don't have the patient to take care of patients. I'm not a good
Understandable.
patient person. So I went into the business side because that is where I think you're going to make the most change. Um, I've been in the private practice of healthcare for the majority of my career, mainly as a chief operating officer, but also a growth officer, with my sole focus of making sure that I am building team members up, and especially women, and getting them to where they want to be in their career and letting them see that there is a clear path to being able to break through some of these glass ceilings in healthcare as a female leader.
Mhm.
Um, Especially because it is interestingly enough, at certain levels, there are still a lot of men. No offense. Well, a lot of men at the top. And so, how can we change that and alter that? And being able to lead from a place of empathy and caring about the other person and taking care of anyone, including all of my employees, my teammates, patients, even now.
Yeah.
Um, like I would want to take care of my grandmother. And so that's what who I am at the core. And I am currently over growth and strategy for a large national independent physician practice in the U.S. We're based out of the Southeast, and we're growing very rapidly. And it's been my pleasure to really grow something that I thoroughly believe in, with
Yeah.
patience and honesty and integrity at the core of what we do.
So from the University of Life, as we call it in Ireland, when you're for working behind a bar, the University of Life. So the PhD is a good one.
It
Um,
is.
Mo, you obviously overlap with a lot of that story, especially on the healthcare side. Walk us through your journey from where you started to where you are today.
Well, Tracy, that was pretty impressive. It's so nice to meet you, Grace. Thank you so much for having me on. And I think before, Tracy, you're talking about working from home and having yoga pants on. If I can say that on here,
I
I do not.
do.
I do not have yoga pants on, but I'm definitely jealous of that. No, I think there are definitely some overlaps. My journey really started as an immigrant, and I know we're going to get into the election, some of the things. But I was born in Dubai. My parents are from Sri Lanka, and we came to the Americas in the 90s, in the early 90s, actually, 1991. And I think, coming here, actually, I'm not here, I'm in Germany as we're recording this, but going to the US at a young age and kind of really, it is, Dubai in the 90s wasn't, it certainly isn't what it is today, was a bit of a shock to the system where I had a plethora of options at the grocery store. Movement wasn't really a thing that you had to be intentional about it, where there it just kind of happened as a way of life. Like you just walked around a lot, we played soccer a lot, just doing all the things. And then I really learned at a young age, because I gained a lot of weight, that in the US you have access to so much. Everything is in abundance, the positive and the negative. That if you're unintentional about what it is that you want to do or what it is that you want to be, then you will just fall out of your way. So I had to learn to be intentional about my activity, even my friends, the food I eat, like what interests I wanted to pursue, because this is a land of opportunity, the land of, essentially anything if you put your mind to it, sort of. And so anyways, fitness and wellness became a core part of my life. And then I, went to college and started working. And I initially worked at Sharp Electronics, focusing on hardware and microelectronics. And I ultimately wanted to do something that I was passionate about, which was wellness. And I said, how can I unlock this? Because what I found is that as I was growing up, working, getting married, going to business school, doing all the things, so many people were either getting out of shape and going down an unhappy path, or they would look at you and say, how are you able to do the things? And really the gap was knowledge. It was, I think, accessibility certainly is one. You've got to have affordability, accessibility, making sure that you're able to democratize access. But then the other part was the knowledge, was knowing that if I just did a little bit, you don't have to go kill yourself every single day or even just on the weekends. But if you just did a little bit, 20 minutes a day, you drank more water, you ate a little bit, just a little bit cleaner, you could still have your dessert, right? It had an exponential impact on your life. And in 08 and 09, I kind of had a front row seat at the evolution of mobile technology, mobile internet, the App Store. And I thought, well, wow, wouldn't this be a fantastic medium to help reach more people? And when I looked at the fitness industry, which I knew nothing about at the time, no one was really doing that, right? So no one was really using mobile, using digital as a way to help improve lives. So using it more from a transactional standpoint, member billing, marketing, like really transactional surface level things. And I said, well, what if I create an agency? Because I had a lot of success with agencies at Sharp, to build to help gyms and digital brands do that. And that's what I did. So I founded SweatWorks in 2012, and we've now been in business for almost 13 years. And our main focus has been in fitness, wellness, and healthcare. And certainly, I think an emerging one that we have to be intentional about is women's health, which I know that we'll be moving into here shortly.
Well, let's go into it then. Women's health, because obviously, Tracy talks about the balance at the, the leadership level. And the way I view things is if you want to have a product or a solution for a diverse audience, you need a diverse representation at the table to understand that customer. And it just makes sense, right? But yet it's not happening. So walk us through a little bit more from your experience around women's health and, again, intentional action and what is happening, what should be happening, what is happening that's successful, and so on. Because we yet have not seen that balance be, realized, at least enough that I see. So give us some good examples, because we definitely want to share the successes. And hopefully.
Well, I definitely think it's happening, maybe not as quickly as we wanted to. And I think here's why. It took us a long time, but just like you have to be intentional about your own health and your own journey, you've got to be intentional about anything that you do, right? So you can't just show up to work one day. You can't just create a research study one day and say, it's just going to work. I'm just going to go get a natural sampling of things, because ultimately, if you hire that way, if you do your research that way, if you build a product that way, just going to let it work.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, let it work means that it's going to be just be influenced by only your team's experiences, right? And if you want to create something that is really a product for everybody, you have to understand where they're coming from. And women is half of our planet. It's half of them. And then you can even break it down into races and ethnicities and location, because all of that matters. But you have to learn that. The other thing that I noticed when I got into this is, I read a book in 1993 called Optimum Sports Nutrition. It really kind of shaped fundamentally how I thought about my life and how I thought about macro and micronutrition. I went back and reread that like about 5 years ago. They didn't really decipher between men and women. Other than that, you have to take a little bit less of a certain multivitamin, eat a little bit less.
Because we're small men, right?
Protein. Well, you're not like you're not like 2/3 of a man, right? And just think about that for a minute, right? If we're just downsizing research and data to fit a woman, I mean, from an emotional perspective, how do you feel? And how does culture feel about women? How do we start? So I think if we just start with health and wellness and how we think about women, and then there's so many other research examples I can go into. I mean, even if you look at data around sleep, data on HRV. Over 80% of a lot of the data that's been done has been done on men.
Yeah.
Yet we're taking that research and the data and we're applying it across the board. And it just doesn't work. And then we wonder why there's more inequalities with women's health. Well, here's why.
Yeah.
You're spending research dollars are being spent unequally between men and women. Now, some of that has to be fixed with regulation. So when you're doing things like a clinical study, you've got to call out and say, well, the N has to include these types of cohorts. And I think that's happening, at least in the private sector. But I think the regulation has to come on top, like the federal government, research institutes have to be able to mandate that. So some of those things are happening. I think the other one is that there's just been more products. Like it's been okay to start focusing, talking about women. And I'll show you one success that I've seen, which is going to come from a place, Grace and Tracy, that you may never have spoken about 10 years ago. And that's Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia, I will say, and that's shocking because I came back from, I go there every 6 months now, and I come and tell my wife, and she still won't go with me, right? She still said, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to go. But I have to tell you, being from that region, and yes, I mean, even saying that prior to 2019, if you're a woman, you didn't have, or I believe it's 2017 rather, you didn't have a license to work out. Like they had to give you a license to work out. You couldn't drive. I mean, it's just, you talk about these things, but to see the interesting thing here is that at least when I go every 6 months, they have a long way to go. But here's the thing. They know they have a long way to go. And the second, every 6 months, guess what? It's progressing in a progressive way, right? So they have a long way to go and a ton of work to do. And it's not going to be easy and it's going to be really difficult to do. But at least there's progress happening. And there's other parts of the world where it's going back the other way, right? So when I come back and I talk about what's happening, and I know that is an extreme case in Saudi Arabia, but at least there's progress. So there's progress happening there. And then I think finally, there's so many really good women's fitness and health products, and we can get into that in a bit. But I am seeing change happening, maybe not as fast as we all wanted it to happen, but at least there's things happening, which is good. The conversation is happening.
And it is really interesting to point out Saudi Arabia, and yeah, I'll be there in February as well, but is that intentional action, recognizing where they are, recognizing that where they want to be, and intentional action to get there. And that is a very important point. So Tracy, what do you see in relation to what Mo was talking about there in the US as well as internationally?
It's so funny because as you were talking, Mo, I kept thinking of there is this interesting shift, and I don't know if it's because of my age. Full disclosure, I'm 47. I don't know if it's because of my age of what I'm seeing change even from advertising. There was a big something on one of the morning news shows about how women in their 40s going into perimenopause, into menopause, are being diagnosed with ADHD at rapid rates. Oh. And but there's never been any research around it. And so I'm talking about a very specific subset about going into menopause and that this focus, but there is a shift, I believe, in women's health from a larger level of, I think more than anything else, and at least in my personal opinion, of women are actually taking more of a voice in their health, and they are being a little bit more proactive. Is everyone? Of course not, but I think women are being more proactive. Plus, as we know here, at least here in the U.S., and I'm sure in a lot of cultures, the woman is really the one that makes the healthcare decisions for the family as a whole. So whether that's what hospital they're going to go use, whether it's what gym they're all going to go attend, or what their kids might be doing from an early age, if it's as a young female, is it cheer, is it soccer, is it this, but really taking a stronger position of ensuring that not only are the women seeking out healthy choices and healthy lifestyles, and but also for their children. And so I do feel like there is a shift. But back to what Mo was saying, it can't be let it work. It's going to have to come from a much higher level. And I agree with, there's going to have to even be fundamental changes for research studies, et cetera, and ensuring that certain things are being really looked at a very micro level for women's health in order to see this massive shift. But
Yeah.
I do feel like it is changing. But I think that it's the women that are kind of forcing that,
Well, we
at
have
least from
to,
my point of
right?
view, what I'm seeing. And
We
what
have
I'm
to
seeing
stand
again
up.
out in healthcare and even at the gym.
Yeah. It's definitely part of our age, Tracy, because yeah, I think the last decade or maybe the last 5 years more so anything else, there is more women researching women. There's definitely more women saying going, this isn't acceptable. Like the fact that we
Mhm.
don't have sufficient evidence on menopause is
Ooh,
like, are you kidding me? Every woman before us has gone through this. Whoa, the 67 known symptoms. Like
yes.
what? Like so, and then obviously we have this kind of scenario where kind of things are getting all under the umbrella. Everything you have, every symptom, every diagnosis, it's just part of menopause. So there needs to be much more thorough research, and we have to step up and we have to push and be that voice going, we're here to be part of research and we're willing to be part of research. And whether
Right.
we're pregnant or not pregnant or on contraception or not conception or, menopausal or hormonal or, we thankfully are going, we're in, like, sign us up. We
Mhm.
appreciate this needs to happen.
Yeah.
And we're willing to do so.
And something, if I can just comment on that, is this idea going back to thousands of years, depending on what culture you're in, but just going through your regular cycle was almost seen like a sickness, like it's like a dirty thing, that it isn't a clean thing. And if you look at even Aura, like but I'm a fan of Aura. We work with them. I have one on my finger now. But initially, when they came out with their own metrics, and I know Grace, you're aware of this, but it would tell you that your readiness score is low when you're going through your period, like, because your temperature is going up, your heart rate is elevated, HRV is coming down. So, if you are looking to work out, but initially think about it, you open up your Aura app and it's going to say, and it's not just Aura, it's all the brands did this, but it's going to tell you you have a low readiness score. Now, if I got that, like I did, this morning because I traveled across the Atlantic, I know I'm tired, I'm a little bit weaker. You feel like it impacts you. But imagine every month as a woman, you're opening up your fitness app, but you're actually perfectly fine. In fact, you're strong. You're you're going through a thing, but the app. So it's the idea of saying, you mentioned, the 60 some stages that and phases that you go through, that a woman goes through, and these are not weak points. These are points to be identified. These are points that have to be intervention might need to happen. But as we think about how technology and services wraps around the different phases, you've got to intervene with the right prescription. Otherwise, you're just applying one thing overall. I mean, we've been guilty of it on the technology side as it relates to fitness. Healthcare has been quite a bit ahead from where we are, but I think those changes are now finally happening.
Yeah.
I would agree. And that is such a fascinating point, and you're right. My trusty watch that still it's not factoring in all of these things that I know when I'm traveling and it's a certain time of my levels of my hormones in the month, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to hate everyone for no reason. B, I'm going to be exhausted for no reason. And you wake up, and if you can, another piece of this is also getting women to understand that it is okay to really listen to their bodies and say, this is what's actually happening.
Right.
I report to the CEO of our company and in turn to the board. The CEO is a very dear friend of mine. He's a male. And he often will say, he said, you know what? I want you to tell me. He said, I want you to call me out if I'm having a day, but I want you to tell me if you wake up and you're angry for no reason, because I want to make sure that it's, if you have maybe some sort of reaction, that it's valid versus, but I'm self-aware enough to actually say that. I'm
Right.
not trying to poo-poo my reactions in any capacity, but if I'm having some crazy reaction because of my hormone levels, and again, this just goes back to, we need to talk about these things, right? For so long we didn't, but I don't need an app telling me that that's how I feel,
Yeah.
or that I shouldn't work out that day, and when in fact I should be.
Right. But you're very self-aware there, Tracy. And obviously
Mhm.
your manager, your CEO is very self-aware. And I mean, I've never had that experience where I've had that conversation with a boss ever, and it's not like I haven't had a number of them. So And I mean, Mo, have you had that conversation with any of your team? Is that something that
I
we're
mean,
open to
my
you?
wife, I have not had that conversation, but I think, as we talk about education and training, something, Tracy, as we were talking, that I just, that just kind of came to me is there's all this education on women for women, right? That's number
Yep.
one, like women for women, and that it's okay to have these conversations. But then I started thinking, what about the men out there? Like how should men
How do
understand?
we
You look
help?
at
Right?
especially young men that are coming
Yes.
up, and we live in this, macho era, and that I'm not for or against that. You could have high testosterone. I mean, listen, I've done that, but at the same time, understanding that, yeah, bro, just because you can go crush it 30 days a month, don't expect your partner to be able, if your partner's a woman, but to be able to do the same, and don't expect
Right.
that. And you have to understand that, and because a woman's cycle, I mean, a woman's body and cycle are infinite times more complex than what we go through. So as us hearing you talk, and all the education that women have to go through to understand where they are, I'm like, okay, that's incredibly important. But now, how do we educate the men, in the world too?
Mo, I'm loving.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. I think that this is where sorry, there she is.
There's the cat.
All of these things that we're discussing, from women's health to, men have to be educated too. And it can't be that I know I'm having my progesterone and my estrogen are tanking, right? I'm in healthcare, I'm a clinician, I know that, right? So I know where a lot of women don't. But how can we educate both men at a younger age, and how can we also encourage women to be able to really listen to their own bodies and be able to have intelligent conversations with the people that might need to know? So this could be an interesting topic just by itself for an entire podcast.
And it is funny,
do.
Tracy, when we're doing the collective, we're talking about, I know we've talked before about the leadership development, and how do we, and I say, help women to be leaders. And sometimes, Mo, I think sometimes been asked before by different parts of the industry, I'm looking for more speakers, and I ask women to speak, and they're like, oh, I kind of don't. I'm like, just get your ass up on stage. You're like, you're credible, you're confident, you're accomplished. And there's an element of discomfort sometimes. I'm like, let me help you get up over that little hurdle, because that's not a qualification. That's more about what is the barrier. It's mental or whatever. But yet we're not still, like, I think, fully understanding all of the science of our bodies and all of our cycles. And again, we're not all the same person. So Tracy and me have completely different cycles. I have no doubt about it. And we come to have completely different reactions. But one of the things we've been looking to do, Mo, and actually it's great that you brought it up, because my bugbear sometimes is, well, how do we help men to support us? Because if we're not articulating, what's going on with us, well, Mo, probably you're more aware than most men as well. You're like, I don't know what to say here. I don't know what's comfortable to say. I don't know if she wants me to say it. I don't know if she... So I think we have to build our dialogue and our tools and our understanding and science. And Tracy, you're further ahead than the vast majority of women even understanding that. So if we get better at articulating and documenting and supporting the conversation, then hopefully we can open up a much more friendly, open conversation. And then it's less of a, I don't know what to say, which means I can't really ask or talk about it. And that's on both sides of the gender here. So we got to, I think, thankfully, and we're getting there, but just be more open to that. So Mo, come in your direction is a leadership conversation around how do we help men to have that conversation where it can be a safe zone. So we'll come back to you on that. We'll have you as the ambassador when we start putting it together.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, think of how much time we spend, at least I certainly do with my leadership team, going through things like personality types, management training, how to deal with emotions and conflict at work. I mean, every quarter, and these are all valid, but how many, trainings have we had around recognizing women and recognizing what they might be going through? Like, we understand things, like, even if there's a mental health crisis, like, you have zero. I can tell you zero. I've in fact, we're talking about it now, but I, as a leader, I try to be attuned to it. I try to, like, because we've had training to say, in order to work with, person A, work with person B, here's how you need to speak to them, right? Here's what is a trigger for them. Like, you understand from personality perspective, and we train our team to kind of learn through that.
We're losing you slightly, Mo.
Lost
However,
you.
it's really important too that we get some sort of, we great you hate this, but some sort of training for both to understand, like, how do we understand where women are, what are things not to say, how do you ask. I mean, there's just certain etiquette things that happen, and then as we go through the process, and then the other part is being accommodating. When you have children, right?
Oh, we're losing you again, Mo.
Oh,
You're back.
we're back.
You're on mute though.
I have no idea what happened there.
We lost you for a minute.
You can
There was
edit
a
that.
glitch in the
Hotel
matrix.
Wi-Fi.
Mo.
But if you think about women going through all phases of their life, at least again, we try to be supportive. There's basic things that you do. You give, paternity leave and those things, and you try to support things like IVF if that's what the route that they have to take, and be very supportive of the whole process and understand what someone's going through. But then being really understanding around even things like childcare challenges that are happening, right? Like, I've seen my team members sometimes get frustrated. Oh, okay, the kids said, but you know what? That's life. And I think, the fact that, and I deal with that, my wife deals with it, women deal with that, but the fact that you have to deal with, children, Tracy, in your case, the cat coming in front of the screen, but that makes you richer, right? It gives you the ability to handle multiple things, but which is why I think, this is a blanket statement, but in our team, like, women make great project managers. They make great product owners. They're great leaders.
Mhm.
That is just the reality of it. And I think we try to identify that, and try, like, you've got to have the conversation, just like you're talking about. Yeah, go be that speaker, and you can certainly do it. We've got to do that internally because of how we've been raised, both men and women, right? And that we've got to understand that as a society, we've been raised in this way. Like, just even look at portion sizes. You're a woman, you're 2/3 of me, right? And it's been ingrained in us. So I think you've got to, like, nudge and push. When you get it, magic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tracy, you're seeing the same, obviously, and I appreciate that we are the week after the election, and this may be released a little bit later, but what changes do you expect? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Ooh, Lord.
And again, feel free to share what you're comfortable sharing, because I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no,
Very interesting time.
it is so interesting because Mo, before you got on, I was speaking with Grace about it, and when it comes to women's health here in the U.S., I'm so scared of being set back on basic human rights as a woman, right? From abortion, et cetera. But the question mark that is in my head around the next 4 years, we have things like, again, I'm going to speak around healthcare specific. We know that value-based healthcare is right upon us in between 2028 and 2030, and so you're going to be reimbursed as a healthcare professional based off of very different metrics than they always have been. And so as we're gearing up for that, that's a known wall that we're going to all have to jump over, this massive hurdle, and making sure that we have shorn up what we have to do internally in any healthcare organization in order to be able to get over that huge hump. But over the next 4 years, what I am frankly a little concerned about is women's health, and how that might change even more drastically in the U.S., but also depending on who is appointed into various levels within healthcare. I'm afraid that we might take a few steps back in things around, say, research, et cetera, just because of what has already been discussed. So there are definitely things that I am quite nervous about, both in healthcare as a female, and just I am a person of very, very huge integrity and empathy, and that is what I wish for our country, and what I'm a little afraid about in the near future. But I think it's imperative that anyone within healthcare wellness, with a voice that can be heard, to walk through this next however long with as much empathy as possible.
Yeah.
But also helping the other person and trying to ensure that that risks are mitigated, if you will.
Right. Mo, how do you see it?
I mean, there's so much, as I'm sure Tracy can go on to, there's so much to talk about. And I think, but let me kind of maybe zoom out a little bit. I think number one, the fact that, we have a decision, I think is positive. The fact that there's been a concession is positive, right? The fact that we'll be able to have a smooth transfer of power is positive. That's one. The second one is around, this election in a lot of ways came down to just one or two issues for so many people. And if you were on one side or the other, it was heartbreaking. Like, and of course, if you were on the side, and a lot of people that voted for Kamala Harris, especially women, had their number one issue was women's health, and whether that is abortion, or
IVF.
IVF, like all of it, right? So I think that, and I think and not only that, but it was also the thing that they felt strongest about. So there was crying in my house and that, but I think the thing that struck out to me is, so that's the single issue voting, which I've never seen in such a way before. Maybe if you go back to Vietnam and the anti-war vote potentially, but we didn't have that here, right? So we had this issue, and then on the other side, it also, a majority of the country, I mean, the popular vote, the all swing states vote, all went to Trump and the Republicans, and they flipped, the Senate, the House, and of course the presidency, and they also improved on all major cities. I mean, even DC, New York, and all that. So what that says to me, it goes back to what we, I think, started talking about at the top of the podcast. It's clearly messaging. Like, so much about it is messaging. It's education. It's this bro, attitude. I don't want to overgeneralize, but it's this bro attitude. And that's clearly like number 7 or 8 on the priority list, when this is half of the population. And the other thing is, also, by the way, 1 in 4 women who said that women's health was the most important voting point still voted Republican. 1 in 4, right? So one thing I want to be careful about is not to demonize any side. That is, but I think what this tells me, I'm looking at the data and I'm just saying we've got a lot of work to do. And I mean a lot of work to do, because on one hand, I can recognize and see that the healthcare system is broken. Like, we have a sick care system. Like, Tracy, your entire team, I'm sure, is dedicated to improving the lives of people, but you're paid and your reimbursement is by insurance companies. So in a lot of ways, like, you want to help this patient as much as you can, and you want to make sure that they're on the way and that they don't come back to you. But that's not how you incentivize. You're incentivized through billables. So we have a broken system, but we have some of the smartest people working in healthcare that hopefully, I think we're going to use these next few years to fix. Tracy, you keep on mentioning 4 years. I'm hearing 4 years a lot. This could be a longer thing. Like, this is, I think, is a dramatic shift of the American populace. I'm saying America could be happening in Ireland, Grace, sure, but we had our election. The people spoke, right? The people spoke, and at the same time, people spoke for that. I'm also seeing GLP-1s come up. I'm working with some gyms that we work with who have actually said that they're losing members because they get on GLP-1s and they don't want to come into the gym anymore. So there's so much that has to be done around education. There's so much I mean, listen, the fact that if you live in certain states, in America, and you have to get an abortion, you can't drive somewhere, and we're the wealthiest, most advanced, richest. I mean, access has to happen. Access is a human right. So we've got to make decisions. We've got to look at a hard look at ourselves and say, without demonizing people and all this stuff, but what are fundamental human rights? And maybe this needs to be in the Constitution, right? Our Constitution gives us certain rights, and maybe we need to add things to the Constitution to afford those rights. And there've been amendments into it before, but I think it's going to take that type of step in order to do it. And I'm hoping that it's not bipartisan. I'm hoping it is bipartisan. I'm hoping that this is everyone in this together because we're Americans and we should want that. We should want what's best for our country, and what's best for our country should be what's great for the world because that is our fundamental belief. And I think Americans are inherently good, but I do believe that there's a lot of education that needs to happen.
That is such a perfect point because that is really truly what it boils down to. It has to be bipartisan in order for it to really have a stronghold and to make a true difference. But there has to be so much education.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that human rights is a partisan issue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the funny thing, Mo, when you talk about other countries as well, is, I mean, obviously the topics and policies are different in obviously the culture is different in every country, but you know, typically there's some general topics that are on the table. You know, homelessness is one I think is a fairly global problem, unfortunately, as well. Healthcare too. But to your point is there's an element of conversation happening in every country, and there's a sick system. US is not unique in having a sick system, unfortunately. We can say that about the vast majority of systems around the world as well. Just they operate differently. So yeah, there's a lot of education, there's a lot of conversation. And to your point, it needs to be that this is not for a political agenda, it's for people. And kind of, it nearly needs to be separated, right, from the party. It's like healthcare is healthcare. It's science-based, right? It's for every individual. It's complex as hell because every single person's physiology is different and every system is different and so on. So yeah, that needs to be that education and a conversation that's about health and everyone and figuring out how do you fix whatever is broken in each piece of it.
Well, Tracy, you've been in healthcare for a long time. I'm curious to, something that I've been thinking about is it sounds like to me that there's a fundamental distrust of the healthcare system. And look, we're in the fitness industry. So in some sense, I think we're guilty of that too, right? Because we believe that we've got the answer to preventative care and that you need to be coming to the community, do all the things. But do you think, and from your perspective, has the general population, do they have some sort of distrust in the healthcare system? And then as a result, do they distrust the healthcare administrators? Do they distrust the doctors? And do they distrust what they're saying about like even women's health? And I'm wondering if there's like a chain reaction there.
You know, that is a fascinating question. And I've worked in a vast majority of either with or a part of or in some way, shape, or form organizations from a single one doctor practice to huge healthcare systems that are just gobbling up the rural healthcare system here and there. And I do believe there's a fundamental distrust of healthcare in general, not only from the general population, but from the people that are in healthcare. Because what we see is, you mentioned insurance. We've all known or seen doctors that have very questionable ethics and are not doing the correct things for either the patient or they are, they're committing fraud or what have you, to insurance companies here in the US. Insurance is such a broken system, to pharma, people not trusting pharma. So I think that it is a true chain reaction. I don't think that any one person specifically distrusts one piece in the healthcare chain. I think that it is very much a chain reaction. If you distrust one thing, then you can see any chink in the chain, if you will. But what is, I think, really, really important is that we have to fix it in some way, shape, or form. But how to do that? That's the biggest question, right? How to fix that? And I have yet to find that answer. If I do, I'm going to retire. But we do have to somehow all get on the same page. And what's interesting is you mentioned earlier, yes, we're trying to prevent diseases as well. But what I see more than anything else is that it's healthcare in the US is very reactionary instead of proactive. So when a patient comes, my current specialty is a little bit different, but when a patient comes into the hospital, it's because they're sick. So it's all reactive. It's not, you have to get them better and get them out the door. That is how the US healthcare system is working. And so every once in a while, you do see some shifts and trying to be a little bit more preventive. And that's where wellness comes into play. And what we should be doing, which is really looking at health from a holistic viewpoint of, yes, there's preventative things. You mentioned GLP-1. Now people aren't wanting to go to the gym because they lost weight. Well, guess what? There goes all your muscle tone too. So you better go to the gym,
Right, or you'll be
because
back
if
in
you don't, you're actually going to be a lot worse down the road. But then there's all of these other research that's coming out that's saying that it's preventing cancer and it's better because of cardiac. So there's all of these,
right.
there's all of these messages that are almost completely just incongruent with each other in a lot of ways. And so I think it is really, really, really imperative that we have got to get together and change the focus. And everyone needs to be at that table. I think wellness from gyms, wellness individuals like yourselves, that is what your whole, that is what your industry is, to big pharma, to the big insurance players, to some of the smartest administrators that I know. Get in the same room along with government and let's figure it out. It's not going to be easy, but at least start down the right road.
Right. Again, intentional action, right? Defining what success looks like and intentional action to get there, but it will require an awful lot of change. And I know, Mo, in like the fitness, sport, health, space, wellness space that we play in, Dr. Fiona Bull, I was just talking to her earlier on in relation to WHO, like she's eagerly looking for us to be better in sync as an industry. And I know we still operate in silos where fitness is in one and sports another and so on, but we still have an awful lot of our house to get in order for that to be easier, because otherwise we're going to end up having conflicting messages and it does become a private business conversation, which is never going to be successful for the long term, and possibly why it's never happened before, right? So at that point. So if we look at, so we're away from politics for the moment, appreciate you guys in terms of the, the experience and the depth and the knowledge. If you look at people that are starting into the industry, right, and that be it physical activity, healthcare, what would you be saying to that person who's even thinking about coming into the industries? Like, what are the lessons? What are the stay away from, don't do? Like, what are those lessons that you would say to this person? Let's assume they're in the US for now. But Mo, I would love you to think about that internationally as well with all of your experience. Tracy, do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Sure. I think more than anything else, whether you're a man or a woman coming into healthcare or wellness for that matter, number one, do your homework. Educate yourself about what it is that you're actually going into. Find a mentor, find someone that has been doing this for a long time and that knows not only the industry, but also can help to guide you as an emerging leader. Make sure that you are sitting with the smartest kids in the class.
Yeah.
I say that all the time to all of my emerging leaders. Go talk to everybody in this organization, get on committees of national organizations and talk to these other people that have been in the industry for so long. They are coming with valuable insights, and they have seen a massive shift already in, say, healthcare. There has been massive shifts. Are we to where we need to go? No, but go and talk to these people and get into the right organizations in order for you to be able to get to where you want to go. But first and foremost, you have got to educate yourself and find somebody that you trust that's in that industry to be able to help guide you in the right direction.
That's why I love apprenticeships in some other industries that work really well, where you can get in at the ground level, get in early, shadow, and figure out if it's for you before you spend 4 years or 6 years at college figuring out it from a theoretical perspective. Mo, what are the lessons you'd add to that?
Well, I would say, some of this is going to be biased just because I'm in the tech industry, but I would say technology is the great lubricant for healthcare. And when I look at some of the upward issues that we've had to face in healthcare, whether it's dealing with really antiquated EMR systems, Epic is the largest one that's in the market today, and if you look at it, it looks like it's like Windows ME. Literally, it looks like Windows ME. And this is the best the healthcare tech company has to offer. If you look at the largest healthcare company in America, or really in the world, it's United Health Group. I think they're the 8th most valuable company in the world. the NPS score of United Health Group is a 4. It is awful. It means that they don't have a great consumer experience. So if someone's coming into the industry, I think that there's never been a better time to come in and really help disrupt and innovate. And what I'm calling is building consumer healthcare. So if you think about healthcare, we've got some incredible infrastructure. Tracy's a part of it, incredible practitioners. But what we're lacking is in the consumer experience. If you think about, what Apple did for the mobile phones. I mean, imagine an Apple store-like experience, but with healthcare. And there's been some innovation out there, like Forward Health and a couple of others. One Medical, kind of with what Amazon is doing, but we're far, far from it. So where I see the innovation really happening is building a consumer-related healthcare where you're seamlessly able to speak to insurance, to speak with the providers, to speak with all the practitioners, that ties it together. That to me presents the biggest opportunity for the next 10 years for anyone looking to come into the industry.
Yeah, the healthcare experience, there is on-site clinics and obviously in the large campuses across the world, including Cupertino and so on. And they have that general ethos, but yes, there's some restrictions because of the software as well as just because of the way clinicians are trained as well. So, but
it's not regulatory anymore, right? So like what the pandemic did is that it broke a lot of those walls. So I remember, like, I can't see you via Zoom. Oh, that's not true. I mean, and even simple things like you've got the amount of forms that have fill out, the fact that you had to put your social security number on a form, they're not allowed to ask for that, right? So I think there's things that, but again, it comes down to training, right? Who's training them to know that?
Right.
So I think that there's an opportunity for a large company that could have the market cap of an Apple. I don't know who it's going to be yet, but ultimately to come out building a product for the biggest industry in the world, which is healthcare.
Maybe SweatWorks has a task on its hands.
We'll be working on it.
Sounds like it.
So if we look at then the existing leaders within the industry, and part of what I'm trying to do, part of this podcast, is to amplify and highlight who's doing great work already. And I know I asked you guys beforehand to think about who would you point to that are emerging leaders or established leaders that you're like, this person is doing great work and they are trying to innovate and disrupt and create a better system and a better world with it. So who are those, women in particular, but who are those emerging leaders that you're like, I'm going to put my hat in the ring to say this person's going to do really, really good change. So Mo, I know you've got a breadth across the world, not just in the US, but who are those people that you see that you'd like to call out? Because we need to amplify every single person doing a great job.
Well, I really appreciate that question. I think, I get to meet so many incredible women every day in this industry, and I get to work with them and learn from them. But someone who's really impressed me, especially over the last, say, about like 2 years, has been Helene from Wild AI. And just because she is unafraid and unbashful, she wears, her opinion and her heart on her sleeve. And she's gotten a lot of attention, and she's really had people, women and men, think about women's health, women's fitness, how we need to be paying more information to the research is one. And the other one, if I can add one more, is probably Tracy Sims. And she's also done an incredible job on the wellness side. And she recently was on Huberman and did an excellent episode, and really, again, playing, I think, a key role in the education part that we're talking about, right? I wonder if everyone in America listens to that Huberman episode on Tracy Sims, could we have had a different outcome? I mean, it sounds crazy to say that, right? But it's also not, because podcasts have grown so much and people are paying attention, right? But it's like, how do you get that out there?
Interesting. Yeah. So I know Helene and that Wild AI is brilliant. And Tracy, if you don't know it, it's a fantastic platform. And she's French by background. That's looking at triathletes and ultimately women in triathletes, and likewise the science and evidence around it, which is fantastic. So yeah, great call out. And I'll have to look up that Tracy Sims podcast with Huberman. Yeah, because I haven't seen it. So good shout out, Mo. Tracy, who do you see in your network?
I do love Tracy Sims. She's great. My experience with women healthcare leaders, unfortunately, has been limited.
Interesting.
Because in almost all of my organizations, they have all been male leaders. There is one, it's a smaller organization, but it is growing nationwide. That is a radiology focused organization here in the US. Oh my gosh, her name, talk about crazy ADD. Her name literally just flew out of my brain. It will come all of a sudden, I'm sure. But
that's all right.
She's disrupting that space quite a bit by breaking the ceiling. And again, it will come to me before the end of this podcast. I apologize. But she is breaking the ceiling. She became the CEO. She is now spearheading a teleradiology and AI platform for the organization. And so she's a very much forward thinker. Again,
disruption, innovation. But even the fact that, Tracy, you're like, it's, that reality that you haven't worked with a whole pile of, female leaders just says enough sometimes, doesn't it? And like, this is the part of the rationale behind the podcast here. What we're doing with the collective is trying to support and celebrate all the good that's already happening, but also make sure that there isn't barriers of perception that are in the way, because that's some of the challenge here. And again, as I said to Mo at the start here, is it's great having leaders like yourself that are sharing the business case, because we're not saying it just because it's the right thing to do. It makes good business sense. Yes. We as consumers who control 85% of consumer spend in women, like, we want more solutions, and from the evidence indicate that 51% of women want to increase healthcare and health spending. So we're saying we control 85% of consumer spend and we want to spend more. So create good solutions for us, be that fitness experiences, be it digital applications, be it healthcare services, be it research. We are willing to be engaged, we're willing to pay for it, but we just need to make sure that they're tailored and safe and evidence-based and supportive of the way we think and the way we live, which is not the same. We are not small men. It's a very simple physiology fact, but sometimes need restating. We're not. So we got to think about us differently. Our neuroscience is different, our physiology is different, and we control a lot of money. So come get us, give us the good solutions. We're willing and able to spend for it. So interesting times ahead. What have we not talked about, guys? I appreciate your time, and I know we're going to wrap up in a moment. And Tracy, we'll tag in the name afterwards, and we're going to tag in the podcast. Lindsay Munn, excellent.
I knew it was going to come. I knew it would come.
Lindsay
and the
Munn,
other one
excellent.
That's actually kind of a disruptor. She's younger. She was over at Atrium Health, which is a large healthcare hospital. It's based in Charlotte, but it's now nationwide with the merge of Advocate. Her name is Kathy Caney, and she is a powerhouse female that really is a big believer in mentorship of new, young, emerging female leaders. And she's young. She's younger than I am, and she's a force, but in the best of ways, and only wants to see women to succeed and help to continue to move forward as female leaders in healthcare, which is still hard to find.
Well, I will absolutely be reaching out to connect, because it sounds like powerhouses that are worth celebrating and connecting with. And thank you for sharing. Mo, appreciate. We're going to be seeing each other in the next few weeks, hopefully in Saudi Arabia, if not sometimes before that. And Tracy, hopefully I'll see you in Charlotte, if not somewhere else in Washington. I know you're in Washington the next couple of days as well. So let's continue the conversation. I mean, your support for the conversation today is much appreciated, but also your support in the world that we live in is really valued as well. So thank you both for doing what you do. And I do look forward to seeing more impact and working with both of you, hopefully in some way, shape or form, in order to continue on the good work. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. You can connect the dots with others by sharing this podcast with colleagues and teammates. At wearethecollective.world, you can join a professional network, avail of professional development, and engage your support team. We collaborate on the shared pursuit for gender balance in health and business. Until next time, keep connecting the dots.